I'm Steve Dabolo with the Cannon Falls Area Historical Society, and we're co-sponsors of this event today along with the Cannon Falls VFW, and we've been working with the Northfield Vintage Band Festival, and that's what has allowed us to bring so many bands over here this weekend. And I am really excited to introduce the 1st Brigade Band of Watertown, Wisconsin. And I just want to read a little bit about this group. They do many numbers during the year, and you can find their schedule on the internet. But in 1864, 18 men from the Brodhead Brass Band enlisted in the Union Army as a band of the 1st Brigade, 3D Division, 15th Army Corps. They left their rural Wisconsin homes to participate under the command of General William T. Sherman in the campaigns of Northern Georgia and the Carolinas. The tradition of excellence that these men established more than 130 years ago lives on today with the members of Wisconsin's 1st Brigade Band. The band makes history alive by presenting period brass band music performed on antique instruments. Attired in uniforms and gowns, the band's musicians, color guard, and costume ladies take you back to the 1860s, to the turbulent era known as the Civil War. This band was originally formed in 1964. Next year, they're going to be celebrating their 50th anniversary. There's more than 80 volunteers, men and women, that make up the 1st Brigade Band. Widely varied in age and occupation, they come from many communities, bringing with them a common interest in their musical heritage. During a typical year, they will meet their audience more than 40 times in concerts, parades, military balls, worship service, and presenting their educational and entertaining program. I knew I was going to miss one, but the Boy Scouts showed up today to help unload everything and set stuff up, and they're going to be helping us with the free pie and ice cream after the concert. We've been doing pie and ice cream. Oh boy. I've got stories about that one. But we have a napkin at the Historical Society. I don't think Zach's around right now. I think it was dated 1892 on a pie and ice cream festival here in Cannon Falls, where all the participants signed that, and Zach's been enchanted with that and has wanted to do pie and ice cream, so that's why we're doing that. So put your cell phones on mute. Enjoy the music. These guys are special. Thank you.
Okay.
We have ladies that will have some CDs available that will be strolling around. They have them in their baskets. I told them that I'm a shameless promoter of other people, but it helps the organization. So if you like the music, buy a CD.
You will love our music. Welcome to this afternoon's concert by the 1st Brigade Band. We are thrilled to be here. I have been told by the managing director that this is not rain. All right, we got it? I would like to emphasize that the band plays music on instruments that date back to the 1860s, and you will hear what President Lincoln and General Lee heard, because we don't play anything that was written after 1865. We're going to start this afternoon's concert with an arrangement called National Airs, and it's just a medley of patriotic airs. In it are Yankee Doodle, the Star-Spangled Banner, and Hail Columbia. Now, no one today would take and write a medley and put the national anthem right in the middle of it. But remember, the national anthem didn't, the Star Spangled Banner didn't become the national anthem until 1931. Therefore, the band is not going to stand during the Star Spangled Banner portion, and you need not either. Ladies and gentlemen, the 1st Brigade Band and its bandmaster, John Condon.
Normally my cue, but I think they over-cued me. I'll let them go for a second here and then we'll take off.
Ladies and gentlemen, you met the bandmaster, John. Now I'd like to introduce the bandmaster emeritus, He was bandmaster for many years, and he is the curator of antique instruments for Heritage Military Music Foundation, Dan Wolpert.
Thank you. What you have before you today is an E-flat brass band, and that's pretty different from the bands that you typically hear, the high school, university bands, and even some of the other bands from the Vintage Festival that may have been over here or that you may have gone to Northfield to hear. This band is centered in E-flat, and that means that the primary instrument, the solo instrument, and Darrell, can I pick this up?
Yeah.
Got to ask permission first. The solo instrument is the E-flat cornet. You want to hold up the E-flat cornets? They're the ones that carry the melody most of the time. And in the middle of the band is the E-flat alto horn. And they're a part of the accompaniment for the band. And notice that as they hold them up, they're all different shapes and configurations. And then the bottom of the band is the E-flat tuba. It's hard to believe that these guys and gals can hold those things up so steady, but even I can, so it's not that impressive. Now, the other side of the band is the B-flat side. The B-flat side of the band has B-flat cornets. These are basically the same instruments that we use in modern bands, but they play a different role in this band. In this band, they're more of an accompaniment instrument than they are a solo instrument like they are in modern bands. And then we have B-flat tenors and bass horns. And there's more sizes and shapes there. And notice the circular one in the back. That's size, what, 44 tall, Paul? Yeah, 44 tall, that's about right. The circular horns were built primarily for cavalry bands, mounted bands, so you could manage the horse with one hand and the instrument with the other. Now in the middle we have a couple woodwinds. We have Dwayne plays clarinets, an E-flat and a B-flat, and Sue plays a piccolo and a flute. They only play one at a time. They're talented people, but they only play one at a time. And back in the back end, we have our percussion section with drums that are rope tension and calfskin heads. And then on the end is Flashing Father Ferris with the cymbals. And that's the E-flat brass band. Now we're going to illustrate the E-flat cornet. And this is an instrument you don't hear very often. And we have a duet that we're going to play. This is a set of variations on Home Sweet Home. Home Sweet Home was a very popular tune during the Civil War, but actually came out of an English opera much earlier than the Civil War. So we have an E-flat cornet duet, John playing the over-the-shoulder, and Steve playing a bell front. Pardon me. Directing the band is the associate bandmaster, Dwayne Roberson.
Wexler, retired from teaching John Condon, and Watertown High School band director Dwayne Roberson. I would like to introduce to you now someone that we affectionately call Mr. Ed. There's some of you out there as old as I and can remember the early days of television and Mr. Ed. Where are you going? And I would like to tell you that he is the band's chief historian, narrator, and soloist. Ladies and gentlemen, Ed Pierce.
The story of Gettysburg is one of countless tales of bravery and sacrifice. Some of the war's most brutal fighting was on the second day, July 2nd, 1863. General Lee's plan to destroy the Union Army was about to succeed. All up and down the Federal position, from Culp's Hill to Little Round Top, there were desperate pleas for reinforcements. A breakthrough at any point would result in a Confederate tide that not only would sweep the field, but go on to Washington itself. The 1st Minnesota was stationed in the middle of the line on the south part of Cemetery Ridge. They had left Fort Snelling in 1861 with nearly 1,000 men. Now, there were just 262 of them left. Their commander was William Colville. Throughout the day, their sister units were called away one by one until only the 1st Minnesota was left. It was near sunset, and many in the ranks were hoping that the day would soon be over and they would be spared the horror of another fight. Suddenly, a wave of fleeing Union soldiers spilled over the hill, and with good reason. Boiling in behind them was an entire Alabama brigade of over 1,500 men ready to claim victory. Colville's brigade commander was the legendary Winfield Scott Hancock. He galloped up to Colville. "My God, are these all the men we have?" Hancock had sent for several brigades to come up, but he also knew it would take at least 10 minutes. 10 minutes he did not have. The Alabama boys were just 200 yards away. Pointing to the rebels, Hancock thundered, "Advance, Colonel! Take those colors!" 262 against 1,500. Instantly, they fixed bayonets and with a savage yell tore into the gray line. Every man realized in an instant what that order meant. "It would be death or wounds to us all," wrote Colville, who was wounded himself in the charge. And every man saw and accepted the necessity of the sacrifice. The flag of the 1st Minnesota fell 5 times in that fight, only to rise again to lead the men on. That flag and the men who carried it forward knew their duty. They stopped the enemy cold. They bought that 10 minutes and paid dearly for it. The casualty rate was 82%. Of 262 who charged, only 47 were left to rally around the sole surviving officer, Captain Henry Coates. It was the largest loss of any American military unit in a single engagement in our nation's history. The sacrifice does not end here. 17 more were casualties the next day as the regiment assisted in repelling Pickett's charge. Private Marshall Sherman of Company C of the 1st Minnesota captured the colors of the 28th Virginia Infantry. Private Sherman received the Medal of Honor for his exploit. The flag was taken back to Minnesota as a prize of war. Henry O'Brien repeatedly picked up the fallen colors of the 1st Minnesota and carried a wounded comrade back to Union lines, despite being wounded in the head and in the hand. He too was awarded the Medal of Honor. William Colville recovered from his wounds and was promoted general. After the war, he became a newspaper editor and state's attorney general. And so the old comrades continued to meet, first in small groups, then to state and national levels. Memorial Day or Decoration Day was established along with formal veterans organizations like the Grand Army of the Republic, the GAR, and the United Confederate Veterans, the UCV, all culminating in the massive 1913 50th anniversary reunion of both sides at Gettysburg. Here they would share a last canteen, swap stories, and recall their lives as young men long, long past. And around the twilight campfires, the songs of their youth would once again rise above the campfire smoke. Tune your voices, comrades, and stand up in a row, for singing sentimentally we are about to go. In the army there's sobriety, promotions very slow, so we'll sing our reminiscences of many havens, oh. Oh, many havens, oh, many havens, oh. We'll sing our reminiscences of many havens, oh. To the ladies of the army, our cups shall overflow, companions in our exile, and our shield against the foe. We throw the gauntlet in their cause and taunt the soulless foe, who'd hesitate to drink to them, and many havens, oh. Oh, many havens, oh, many havens, oh. We'll sing our reminiscences of many havens, oh. To our comrades who have fallen, one cup before we go. They poured their lifeblood freely out, pro bono publico. No marble points the stranger to where they rest below. They lie neglected far away from many havens, oh. Oh, many havens, oh, many havens, oh. We'll sing our reminiscences
Thank you, Mr. Ed. Our band is fortunate to have the music books of the original 1st Brigade Band, 1864 and 5. There are about 60 selections in these music books. We're going to entertain you with a sampling from the original books. About 60% of those 60 selections are quick steps. We call them marches today. Several of those quick steps are arrangements of popular tunes of the day. This arrangement we're going to play for you is called the Midnight Hours Medley and is based on 2 tunes. "'Tis the Midnight Hour" and "What's a Home Without a Mother?" The 1st Brigade Band, like all the other Civil War bands, played for dances. They played polkas and schottisches and, of course, waltzes. We think you'll find a delightful tune with the Elfin Waltz. books of the Civil War usually had worship music in it too. After all, they played for worship services and funerals. One of the hymns in the 1st Brigade Band books is called Consolator. You will recognize it as Come Ye Disconsolate. The music books of the era usually had in it Dixie, both North and South. The 1st Brigade Band version seems to have been arranged for dances because it is combined with the reel tune called Ned Kendall's Favorite Reel. Ned Kendall was a famous key bugle and cornetist of the era. Ladies and gentlemen, Dixie!
Dixie in a moment.
We call this section of our program Foster on Fire. Why Foster on Fire? The music of Stephen Foster is frequently sweet, sentimental, masses in the cold, cold ground, beautiful dreamer, I dream of Jeannie, out where my love lies dreaming, my old Kentucky home. All slow and a good cathartic cry. Well, sorry folks, brass bands just did not see it that way. They saw the fun and zest of his melodies. Band adaptations were lively and filled with an excitement that only the new medium of the brass band could fulfill. So let's have some fun with a little Foster on Fire. First up is Old Dog Tray. This spirited arrangement by G.W.E. Friedrich was originally published in the Brass Band Journal. Now, the death of a beloved pet is hardly the stuff of fun, but since only the melody is evoked, Friedrich clearly saw the possibilities for a spirited brass band version. Enjoy, Bandmaster! Lulu is Gone is our next offering. Foster is our original 4th of July composer, born on that day in 1826. This date is notable as the 50th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence and the death of Thomas Jefferson and John Adams. Now, we don't know who Lulu is from the title, but we do know that Thomas Jefferson, John Adams, and Lulu are gone. I'll be back at the end of the tune. Our next bit of fiery Foster was also arranged by Friedrich. It is a tour de force for the virtuosic abilities of the mighty E-flat cornet. Now, though small in size, it took lips of leather and lungs like bellows to play this magnificent little beast. A sign at an audition for players of this instrument might easily say, "Only the best need apply." You're about to hear why. Bandmaster! Our final fling on Foster on Fire is a most curious selection. It's called Santa Anna's Retreat from Buena Vista. This is a musical pastiche of the famous fight of the Mexican War. It was a great American victory that took place on February 23rd, 1847. And the music clearly expresses how fast Santa Anna left. Civil War notables, Robert E. Lee, James Longstreet, Pickett, Jackson, U.S. Grant, Jefferson Davis, all served in the Mexican War fighting Santa Anna. After losing the war to the United States, he went on to promote the virtues of a material called chicle, a rubbery substance. The former dictator thought it would replace rubber. It didn't work. A New York businessman named Thomas Adams bought a ton of the stuff from him and turned it into a new American product, chewing gum or chiclets. So we close to let you chew on our final fusillade of Foster on Fire. Good that they let me out of the home this afternoon to do this. This bothers me more than it does you, I'll tell you that. There were two tunes that this band used to play many years ago. I've been with the band now more than 35 years. And there were two tunes that we used to play, but they were both short. And they didn't seem to kind of fit any place. So I arranged the music for this band, have been for a long time, and I decided that these two, and I'm not sure why, fit together, except they're kind of like fall music. It's When the Swallows Homeward Fly, and what's the other one? Oh, and The Last Rose of Summer. So here is The Last Rose of Summer and When the Swallows Homeward Fly, kind of like fall stuff, but it's put together in a polonaise, and I think you'll enjoy the whole thing put together. In 1864, 18 young men left the little town of Brodhead, Wisconsin to form the 1st Brigade Band, 3rd Division, 15th Army Corps. They thought they had some good things going for them at that time. First of all, they had a fine set of tailored uniforms from the firm of Smith & Bostwick in Janesville, Wisconsin. Second of all, they had a brand new set of German silver over-the-shoulder band instruments from the celebrated manufactory of D.C. Hall in Boston, Massachusetts. Now that doesn't mean much to you, but it did to them at that time because those were the finest band instruments on the planet at that time. And third, and perhaps most important, they carried with them a music book that had the finest repertoire that any band on either side of the fighting had during the Great Civil War. The 1st Brigade Band stood ready to play for every conceivable occasion and event that could possibly come their way in service of the military. In March of 1865, the band was proclaimed to be the model band for General Sherman's entire army by no less than Billy T. Sherman himself. And in May of 1865, the band participated in a gala 2-day event in Washington, D.C., known as the Grand Review of the Troops. Now, at this event, it took 2 days to do. Hundreds of thousands of troops paraded in triumph down Pennsylvania Avenue. Scores of military bands played up and down the nation's capital. But when it was all said and done and the newspaper accounts were in, only one band was cited. Cited for 3 reasons: neatness of dress, brightness of instruments, and the fine music discoursed. Clearly, by 1865, the 1st Brigade Band had established a tradition of excellence. Tradition of excellence that lives to this day through the recreated 1st Brigade Band. The band has performed as far east as Pennsylvania, Maryland, Virginia, the Carolinas, Georgia, Tennessee, Ohio, Indiana, Michigan, Illinois, Iowa, Minnesota, and as far west as Fort Laramie, Wyoming. The band has recorded 14 volumes of the Making History Live series and is by special commission recorded for Wisconsin Public Television, the History Channel, all 3 major television networks, Time Life Music, and has been technical advisors to no less than the United States Marine Band. 3 times the governor's choice of the state of Wisconsin, the 1st Brigade Band! Recreated 1st Brigade Band as we participate in street parades throughout the length and breadth of this glorious land of ours with a song that wrote a musical finish to the war. A song that ironically General William T. Sherman grew to hate with all his heart. But make no mistake, ladies and gentlemen, when he first heard Marching Through Georgia, he thought it was a terrific tune. And wherever he went, they played Marching Through Georgia. Whenever he arrived, they sang Marching Through Georgia. Whenever he walked in the door, they played, hummed, sang, whistled, toot, plunked, Marching Through Georgia. I think you can see where the man grew weary of it. Nonetheless, it is our signature tune on the street, ladies and gentlemen, and we present it to you with Badger pride, the song that wrote a musical finish to the Civil War, Marching Through Georgia. Ring the good old bugle boys will sing another song. Sing it with a spirit that will start the world along. Sing it as we used to sing it, 8,000 strong, while we were marching. And now, ladies and gentlemen, as we draw to a close, we have a guest speaker of some note.
Ladies and gentlemen, as a son of the South, you have to believe that all of this blue behind me makes me just a little nervous. I was in New Orleans, January 1861, when Louisiana went out of the Union. I jumped right on a riverboat and headed north. Didn't want no part of that. All along the way up the river, the blockade closed behind us just below St. Louis. Jefferson Barracks, they fired 2 shots through our chimneys. I jumped right off that boat and joined the Confederate Army, the Marion County Raiders, under Tom Graves. Was made 2nd lieutenant. Had the near distinction of being captured by the then Colonel Ulysses S. Grant. After 2 weeks of service, I resigned. The reason for that was I was fatigued from hiding and retreating. But I'm not here to talk about me today. I'm here to talk about a very great lady. She's just that, a very great lady. She was also a celebrity, which is something else, of course. She was the toast of society. She was a suffragette, a lady ahead of her time. She was also one of the finest singers this country has ever produced. Her name was Miss Julia Ward Howe. After all this time, we remember Miss Julia with great affection because of some words that she wrote for a song. I don't think that there's any argument that it's the greatest song that was ever written with the greatest lyrics that were ever sung. Now, this music started well ahead of the words. It started in churches and then moved out into the battlefields. It became a hymn that grew and quickened the heart of marching men. It's truly a unique story. Before the Civil War, there was an old man by the name of Brown who tried to start a civil war of his own. Brown was an angry old man who reckoned that it wasn't enough just to say that slavery was wrong. Slavery had to be ended. The slaves had to be freed. So he and his sons and some other people grabbed up their guns and wanted to start their own civil war. It didn't work. No one was freed. Mr. Brown was caught, tried, and charged with treason and hanged. Well, he was either a martyred hero or a bloodthirsty villain, depending on your point of view. It's an argument that still goes on today. "You can dispose of me," Brown said, standing on the gallows. "You can dispose of me very easily, but this other matter can't be disposed of. The slavery question. The end is not yet." Well, they buried him. And not so long after that, that crazy private battle of his broke out so publicly that it nearly split this country in two, nearly destroyed it. Early on in the Civil War, a few soldiers picked up that old almost forgotten hymn and improvised some words, and pretty soon an entire army was marching to it. Maybe that old Brown, what he'd done in life was unlawful, but the spirit moving him was freedom. The spirit in our land that we would hope would never die. That's the sense of what the soldiers were singing. John Brown's body lies a moldering in the grave, but his soul goes marching on. It carried the whole Union Army into battle. Now, Miss Howe was a lady who made it the battle hymn of the Republic. The whole Republic. A nation, as Miss Howe's greatest admirer, Abraham Lincoln, so aptly put, dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Her song was for all of us to sing and all of us to live by. She had a sleepless night one summer evening in Washington, D.C. at the Old Willer Hotel. Just before dawn, the words of that song came to her all at once, as if handed to her by some unknown force. She got out of that hotel bed and, as she said later, found an old stub of a pen and wrote all those words down. And as the sun came up on that sleepy city, she was complete by the time the sun had hit the paper. It's a song. The words of that song bind all of us together. It holds us. A song not for half a nation, but a whole nation to stand and sing together. Ladies and gentlemen, the battle hymn of the Republic.
Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord. He is trampling out the vintage where the grapes of wrath are stored. He has loosed the fateful lightning of his terrible swift sword. His truth is marching on. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. His truth is marching on. In the beauty of the lilies, Christ was born across the sea, with a glory in his bosom that transfigures you and me. As he died to make men holy, let us die to make men free. Our God is marching on. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. His truth is marching on.
He has sounded forth the trumpet that shall never call retreat. He is sifting out the hearts of men before